everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Alpha Female Chronicles podcast. My name is Lindsay. I'm the author and creator of the blog, the podcast, and the book, Alpha Female Chronicles, that is available now on the Friesen Press website. On today's episode, I am joined by my partner in crime, my MVP, Ludney. Hi, Ludney.
Hi, Lindsay, and hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us again today.
And we are also joined by a very good friend of mine, Michelle. Hi, Michelle.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm very excited to have you on the podcast. Could you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yes, I can. So my name is Michelle Béland, and I live in Montreal, but was raised in Gatineau, Quebec. And I've been in Montreal for the past 10 years. I am a writer, and I've been working on my first book for the past 2 years, and I'm hoping to get it published sometime soon. And I'm also a mom. So I guess that's all for now.
That's all for now. That's a
lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And I've known Michelle for a little while. We used to work together back in the day. So I was very excited that she decided to join us on an episode. So today's episode will focus on the poem Slowly But Surely that is featured in my book, Alpha Female Chronicles. It's featured on page 62. I wrote this poem at a time in my 20s where I was thinking about stepping out of my comfort zone even more than I had started. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, when I started the blog in 2007, it was a chance for me to really broaden my horizons and to try things I had never done before. And a few years after that, at the time that I wrote the poem, I was about to complete my studies at Concordia University in English literature, and I had this longing for freedom. I felt like a caged bird when I was in university. I felt that I was so stuck in the life of a university student, going to class, going to the library, and I knew that my journey in my bachelor's degree was about to come to an end, and I was so happy to start a new chapter in my life. And this poem came to be around that time. But although I was yearning to be free, I was still scared of what was out there, because university was, it was my comfort zone. School was my comfort zone. All I knew was performing to get grades, even though I knew that there was something more out there for me to explore, to really own my craft, but it was still scary. And also, I was scared of how I would feel once I became a writer, or at the time I wanted to be a magazine journalist. I was like, okay, people are going to read what I think. They're going to read my stuff. And it was a bit daunting, It wasn't going to be on the blog anymore. I would be published or in print and all of that. So I was excited about what was out there, but I was kind of reticent to just step out there. So I'll read you the first stanza. Slowly but surely, I work up the courage to be all that I can be. Although it feels safer to stand in the shadows, I'm impelled to expose my true potential. Part of me would rather go unnoticed and exist unbeknownst to others, to avert inquisitive glances and misguided judgments. But would that be beneficial to deny my fullest potential? Now, I know you ladies are creative types. You write. I know you've done spoken word performances before. You write poetry. Michelle, you're a writer. You've been featured in the Globe and Mail. I didn't forget. And you're creative types, and the both of you know how what it feels like to really go out there. So how was it for you ladies to make the decision to make your talent public and available for other people to enjoy and to criticize? Were you hesitant? Were you excited? Were you petrified? Michelle, we'll start with you.
I was terrified, for sure, because when you create something and you put yourself out there, you expose yourself to rejection, you expose yourself to criticism, and not everybody's gonna like what you write about. So and I'm somebody who, I'm working on that, but I'm very concerned with what people think of me. I'm a people pleaser. I'm afraid of what are people going to say. So it took some time to have the courage to put myself out there and accept that some people are not gonna like what I write about, and some people are gonna appreciate it, and that's okay. But for me, it became it came to a point where it was terrifying, to publish certain essays or things like that, or even just thinking about publishing my book. I'm terrified, but for me, the pros, they outweigh the cons, which is judgment. If I'm afraid of other people's judgment, that means I'm living in fear. And so for me, the pros are much more important, which is sharing my art, sharing my voice, with people. I think I have important things to say too. I have important things to share, and I think being vulnerable, I think people really connect and relate to when you open yourself and you're vulnerable and you're being real and you're speaking your truth. So I haven't, published a lot of things that, I don't have a lot of things out there at this point, but the feeling of connecting with people through my art, it's just so great. And seeing my words on print, seeing my name, it's an incredible high. It's an incredible high. So it was terrifying. It is terrifying. For example, I'm working with a working coach right now, a writing coach right now, on my book. And it was terrifying having her read my manuscript and critique it, because it can bruise the ego sometimes, but once you put the ego aside and you accept other people's help, you can see how your work of art can become even better and even more beautiful. So yeah.
Absolutely. Ludni?
Well, for me, it was also a terrifying experience, more in the sense where, a little bit like Michelle said, where you're very conscious of how people will receive your words and what they'll think about what they'll think about them, what they'll think about you as well. So as much as the experience was terrifying, it was also cathartic for me, because for me, writing has always been an outlet, and putting those words on paper were just my kind of version of therapy. I could just put all my emotions, all my teenage angst, heartbreak, anything that was not working out for me, I would put on paper. And then being able to share it, it kind of came, how can I say, it kind of happened out of the blue. I believe I had just posted something online, and a friend of mine just happened to see the post, because I'm not somebody that posts all the time. A lot of times I don't post pictures. I'll post quotes or like poetry and stuff like that. So when he noticed that I actually made a actual post, he went on and started reading it, and then he made a comment, and I was like, oh wow, like it's not so bad, you know. And so I think for me, putting my work out there was a lot, was more about being able to share and live the experience through the eyes of somebody else. And that was like the most rewarding part for it. Like it wasn't about me anymore. Like that's what I realized. Like it was just bigger than me. It was completely outside of me. And somebody else was living it. Somebody else was, you know, mulling over the words, seeing how it applies to them, seeing how they respond to it and have their comments. That was amazing.
I think the most rewarding thing about sharing your art, and especially writing, is that it really does connect us to other people. And it's not even about us anymore. You know, it's about what the reader is feeling, or it's about what that person in the audience is feeling, what resonates within them. It becomes about them. And I think that's what excites me the most about sharing my writing, you know, seeing how people connect, and it kind of brings people together. You know, when I thought about, when I was thinking about releasing my poems, you know, there were poems I wrote, like some of them date back to like 2008. You know, I was in a different state of mind, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to share these poems and people are going to know just how screwed up I am. But somehow other people could feel like, hey, she's as screwed up as I am. I'm not alone, you know? So in a way, it really brings everyone together. And it, like, I remember years ago, I had a friend telling me that I should publish my poems. I should have my work printed out. And he was like, you're just being selfish with your art. You need to share it. And I was like, yeah, but at the time, as a writer, you're concerned about how you will feel. You know, people are going to nitpick my work. They're going to tear it apart. I'm going to feel like, you know, I don't know what I'm doing or whatever. But what we're missing, the point that we're missing, is that people are going to read it, and it might inspire them to do the same. It might help them heal in some way. Like they might read about a situation in a poem or in a book, and they're like, oh my gosh, I went through the same thing and I felt the same. Like I feel seen, you know, I feel heard, you know. And we don't know the impact that what we write could have on someone's life, even though we feel that it's something like, it's just a book, it's just a poem. You don't know, like this could be the poem that helps someone like have a better day, or just help them process something. So there's this beautiful quality to like writing that sometimes I feel people like take for granted or undermine, but there's so much power in sharing what we have. And also, Michelle, you spoke about living in fear. That's something that's, you know, paralyzing, especially to a writer. You live in constant fear. What if this happens? What if this sucks? What if they don't like it? What if? And we often live in fear, and we stay paralyzed because of that. That also translates in other areas of our lives, you know, whether it's professional lives, personal lives, lives at home. You know, we're wondering like, okay, what if I don't have what it takes? What if this is not gonna work out? You know, were there instances, Michelle, where you asked yourself, when you think about that article you published in the Globe and Mail a few years ago, was there a moment where you asked yourself, what if?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's funny because that one article, that one essay in the Globe and Mail, I had a feeling that it would get picked up. When I sent, when I sent them the essay, I thought I had this knowing, this feeling. I think this is right. This is right. And I think this is going to work out. And at one point, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, several weeks, over a month pass, and it's like, oh my God, they haven't written back. Then I don't think they're interested. I don't think they're gonna go for this essay. And yeah, and of course there was moments I was like, oh my God, what if they think my essay is crap? Who am I? Who do I think I am? Like, how dare I, submit an essay to the Globe and Mail? Who am I? But a couple weeks later, they wrote back and they said, you know what, we would love to publish your essay, in our paper. So that was really exciting, and I was, on a huge high, and it was the first time that my words would be published in print, because I've published, a couple of essays online, but never in print. So that was really exciting. But then it's like, oh my God, like after the whole high and the dust settles of I'm going to get published. And it's like, oh my God, like my words, like my essay is very vulnerable. And like, I write a lot of, personal essays, and, I, no filter about my life, I'm just putting it all out there. So I was like, oh my God, what are my parents going to say? What are my in-laws going to say? What are, my friends going to say? Like, I'm just putting it all out there, and all of these, strangers going to think, oh no, but at one point it's something you have to deal with as a writer. It's something you have to be comfortable with. You have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable, with the unknown, and with the what ifs. It's a constant battle with your own ego, I find.
Yeah, the ego of a writer can just either propel you or just bring you down and just stop you in your tracks. Ludni, how did you feel right before you did your first spoken word event?
Oh my God. It was the most horrible experience ever. It's not horrible in terms of being on stage and saying my words out loud. That was really well received. Everybody loved it. But you know what, like I said, for me, writing poetry was about releasing, my emotions, right? And then kind of without necessarily having to coping with them. So you're going through something in your mind, you're living something, you're putting on a paper. It's kind of just taking it from one box and putting it into the next without afterwards you're like, you know what, I don't really want to take care of it. I don't really want to deal with it. So when I was asked to do the piece on stage, it was for a specific event, and it so happened I had the specific poem. So then I had to humble myself and read through it again, because like I said, sometimes, especially if it's emotional poetry, I'll write it down and not go back to it, just because for me, I'm just putting it out. So it was really humbling experience for me to actually have to go back to it and read through and understand my process, understand what I was saying, make sure that it made sense for public consumption. So that process kind of happened in a single-minded purpose. I was just okay, let me just go through it, write it, without even thinking about the fact that I would have to stand in front of people and actually say those words out loud. Because a lot of times, especially as humans, as people, women, a lot of times we don't necessarily say how we feel, like truthfully, or, you know, mean what we say, basically. So I had to, like, once I got to the event and I started realizing, like, oh my God, like, I have to say these words out loud. And I, like, honestly, I think I probably went to the bathroom like 4, 6 times before I had to go on stage. Like, I couldn't keep any liquid in my body. Like, you had the urge, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to go to the bathroom. I have to go to the bathroom. And then when I went on stage, the only thing that helped is that the lights were really, really, like, really, really light. So the room was really dim. So I couldn't really see that many people. So at least that was kind of like a reassurance that I had. I'm like, okay, like, I'm kind of in the dark, I can do this. But then it became so emotional for me to actually read those words, and then stumbling through the emotions, stumbling through the words. And I think that eventually, for people listening to it, it added to the experience, right? But for me, right at that moment, it was like absolutely horrible. I was like, oh my God, like, why am I putting myself through this? This is so painful. But once it was done, and I came off stage like shaking like a leaf, and I took like one breath, I was like, okay, it's over. Yeah, it's done. I did it. Okay. So that first experience is always the hardest, right? Like, in any area of life, like, whenever you have the idea to do something and go through with it, then honestly, your subconscious is going to do everything in its power to make you second guess yourself, make you doubt your abilities, make you doubt, you know, whatever you're doing. Like, why are you doing this? Like, do you really need to put yourself through it? And sometimes it's just a matter of like pushing through all that, and being steadfast in like owning up to like the commitment that you made and doing it. So yeah, so that was it for me.
Sometimes our thoughts are so, like, it's like we're sabotaging ourselves in a way, because we're so consumed with our fear, and we create these scenarios in our minds of how people will react and how we'll feel and how the situation is going to be, as though we had a sort of magic 8 ball and we could figure out everything that's going to happen. And most of the time it doesn't, you know. Joyce Meyer has, she has this quote that I love. She says, worry is a down payment on a problem you may never have. So when we think about like the life of an artist, you know, I guess the pains we go through, it's basically that we're trying to anticipate every outcome. Okay, what if they like it, but what if they like it and then they want me to perform like next week at another event? Or what if they like it and they want me to write another article? Like, do I have it in me? Like, am I good enough? You know, if it does work. So in a way, at some point we become afraid of our own success. We realize we're aware of the talent that we have. You know, we have a measure of talent that we have, and we know we're pretty good. And we're like, okay. But we're like, okay, but what do I do if people actually want more? What do I do then? I can't like rest on my laurels and just say that, oh yeah, I have this thing that's pretty good, you know? Something that I wanted to talk to you about is imposter syndrome. That's something that does a lot of damage to any kind of creative type. And not only creative type, but anyone that is performing on a professional level, feeling that you don't have what it takes, feeling that you did not earn your spot somewhere, feeling that you're lacking the skills to be on the same level as your counterparts. As a writer, I know that I often feel like that because, yeah, okay, I got a bachelor's degree in English literature. So what? You know, there are people out there like publishing books that, you know, aren't necessarily good at writing because they got ghostwriters and all of that. And you're like, okay, they're at a level that I would love to attain. I have the skills, but do I really have what it takes to get to that level, you know? Or if people say that, oh, you're an author, you could ask yourself, am I really an author though? Like, this is my first book. I don't feel that accomplished to put that, to brand myself or to attach this tag on myself that says author or poet, you know? Some people that refer to me as a poet, I'm like, yo, relax. I write poems, but I'm not a poet. Like, to me, poet is like William Shakespeare. I know that's like a steep like climb, okay? But to me, like the title does not match who I am because I'm still struggling with imposter syndrome. Michelle, have you experienced imposter syndrome, and how did you feel about it, and what was the trigger for you in that situation?
Well, first of all, Lindsay, I would just like to say that you are an author and that you are a poet, and you are very worthy of that title. I listen. I know. I understand. I understand what you've been going through because, of course, I've been going through that myself. But one thing though, I feel like I don't consider myself an author yet because I haven't published a book yet, but I do consider myself a writer. I used to write poetry when I was, a teen, about, teen angst and heartbreak and all of those things, and kissing boys and yeah, but I've been writing for a really long time, and there have been periods in my life where I've stopped writing for a number of reasons, but I always go back to it. So I know that, in my soul, at the very core of who I am, I'm a writer. I'm not an author yet, but I have experienced imposter syndrome because when I've heard of people who have published books, or people even, there was a time a couple years ago when, I would, hear people say, oh, I'm starting a book, like I'm writing a book, or I'm going to publish her book, or whatever, people, because, we have been, we knew each other as copywriters, and as copywriters, working with a lot of copywriters, a lot of those copywriters are writers as well. They're just copywriting to pay the bills. And so I would hear, colleagues like, oh yeah, I'm going to write a book, or I'm going to start a book. And for some reason I felt inferior,
Same.
I felt inferior, and I was like, oh my God, like, I wish I could be like them, or I would feel envy, like, oh, I wish I could, do that too. And I don't know why I didn't, at that time, I didn't have the courage or think that was possible for me because I am talented. I think it comes down to self-worth. I did not have enough, I didn't believe in myself enough, and I didn't have enough, self-worth to go ahead and do it. But one thing that I have noticed, with established authors, you were mentioning established authors and people, that are a level where you want to be at. So I look, at, there's certain authors that I really, really love. They've written 2-3 books. They have a couple of, film deals. They've been doing some screenwriting. Their book were optioned for films and all of those things. And when I see those examples, and now, I tell myself, the envy that I feel for their lives and their level of success and what they're doing with their craft, it's an indication to me that there's something that I would like for myself. And I just have to hold on to that feeling and just keep pushing through, keep pushing through. And those, those women, those authors that are at the level that I would like to be one day. They started, they weren't always published authors. They started somewhere. And so if I tell myself, if I just grab on to that feeling that, you know what, if they can have that, I can have that too. There's a place for everybody. There really is. There's always a place for talent. So that's why I try to remind myself, when I'm feeling, self-conscious or feeling a little desperate or discouraged, because it is, in the writing world, we were talking about this before we started recording the episode, how it's a big game of rejection, so yeah, I just have to grab on to that feeling and push through and keep believing in myself, because I know there's a seat for me there. I know I'm worthy. I just have to never forget that and just continue.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that you touched upon feeling that you don't have enough of that self-worth to feel that you belong in that circle, because that's something I've been struggling with, just feeling that you're in the right place. You have the tools, you have the talents, you have like the skills and the resources to belong here, and there is enough space at that table. And if there's not enough space, make your own table, and you just have to know, you have to keep reminding yourself of the gifts that you have. And if you do focus on that instead of not feeling as accomplished or fulfilled, then, as long as you focus on the gifts that you have, you can keep pushing. Ludni, could you tell us about experiencing imposter syndrome?
Well, me and my imposter, not even a syndrome anymore. It's its own entity. We argue a lot. I could say it like that. It's something that's ever present. Like Michelle said, it's about really knowing the value of your self-worth and the value of your talent. And for me, given that writing, in the beginning, was not something that I'd shared with anybody, I had no idea the weight that my words had. I had no idea how people felt about them, because I had never shared them before, right? If you look at English grades, French grades are good, right? So that means that, at least you know how to put words together, you know how to conjugate and all that stuff, but that doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things if you're not doing anything with that talent. So in the beginning, I wasn't doing anything. I was really just putting my words together, building poems and poems and poems without doing anything with them. And then sharing them came with, like I said, its own emotional baggage, because on top of opening myself up emotionally and sharing those poems to the public, I had to also open myself to my own scrutiny and now analyze the feelings that I was going through while I was going through them, and really, think about, okay, is this something that I want to do? Does my voice matter? That's something that you, as a poet, it's something that you do not think about until you actually share your work, is whether or not your voice matters. Because everybody always has something to say. It doesn't necessarily have to be intelligent, but people will say stuff, and then so that's where my imposter syndrome really kicked in, is at that moment when I started questioning myself, how does my voice matter? Why does it matter that I say what I'm saying? What is it? Who does it benefit? What does it do? And that's when, at times I was like, you know what, no, I'm not writing anymore. Like it just felt like completely discouraged. And I remember I spoke to a friend of mine, I remember one time, and I think I was telling them, they were asking me about like writing something for like a personal, kind of like a greeting card type of text, right? Where it's not something that's emotional, it's something that's completely disconnected from myself, right? Just writing for somebody. And I remember telling her, like, no, I'm not going to do it because, there's no point. Like, it's not going to be any good. And she was like, what? She's like, no, like, and she's like, you should do it because you have talent and you have to remind yourself that you have talent and celebrate the fact that you have talent. And that is where me and my imposter, we kind of argue, is because every time that, it's coming around and trying to make me doubt, my abilities, doubt my writing, doubt my words. When I start thinking about, like, a lot of people are telling me, just like you, Lindsay, like, oh my God, like, you should put your words in a book, you should publish something. And I'm like, I don't know. But, so when I'm having those conversations with myself, then I have to stop myself and remind myself that, no, I have talent and I have to celebrate those talents. And the best way to deal with imposter syndrome is, like, stop thinking about like all the exterior factors and just be happy in that moment that you have with yourself, saying, oh my God, like I published, a book, Lindsay, and just bask in that moment and build from that moment without, like, thinking about anything negative. And it's going to be a constant battle, because it's a battle, between your self-worth and between your own insecurities. But sometimes you have to think more about, like, how you can outweigh all of these doubts and insecurity and just build yourself up from there.
Definitely. And one thing is that, imposter syndrome, like, I feel that it starts with some thought patterns, when you feel that, oh, well, I'm a good writer, but so and so is so much better, and now, like, she published like 5 books, and there's a lot of thought patterns going on in our minds that we have to fight daily. You were saying that imposter basically has its own personality for you. It's an entity, and you have to fight with that entity every time that you're working on your craft, or you're being confronted with, like, a new project or whatever. Like, imposter kicks in, and every time this happens, you're like, okay, what's going to happen now? Am I going to fall apart, or am I going to push through this time? And it's this constant battle in our minds just to get something out. And those thought patterns can be damaged, they can be damaging, but I mean, there's a way for us to kind of rewire our brains to think differently. Just because a thought pops up in our mind doesn't mean we have to give it power, but it's easier said than done, right? Trying to find ways to kind of combat, those thoughts. And sometimes those thoughts are like, could lead us to believe that whatever we're doing doesn't meet the requirements of what success is. When we compare ourselves, that's one thing that's really damaging. When we compare our craft to someone else's, that's the most damaging thing that we can do, because we'll never feel that we're good enough. We'll never feel that we measure up. And feeling that way, it hinders our progress. It hinders our ability to really, really develop our art, And one thing I want to touch upon is the definition of success. We often think that success should look in a certain way. It should fit in a certain mold. it should be compatible to a certain template. As a writer or any type of creative or professional environment, success will look in a certain way. If someone is working in a corporate environment, success to them could be, well, I need to be senior VP in 5 years, or someone who, I don't know, is has a life in like academia or whatever. They're like, okay, well, in 5 years, I need to get that PhD, you know? I know I've struggled a lot in terms of defining what success is to me, because I would compare myself, or I would compare my accomplishments to other people like in my circle or people I know. And I would feel somehow that I was unaccomplished because I hadn't like attained their definition of success. So how do you ladies define what success is? Do you base your success on either academic success, relationship status, or any type of status or accomplishment? Michelle?
Well, I think my definition of success changed over the years. I feel like, I was programmed to fit in a certain mold, to live my life a certain way. And, okay, so you get married, because I'm married. Okay, married, and then, you buy a home, and you have a full-time job, and then you have children, and then, that's what I thought what success was. But at one point during my life, and obviously, a job with benefits, a car, and all of those things, kind of like the rat race. And at one point, a couple of years ago, I realized that definition of success didn't fit with who I was becoming anymore. So do I know what my definition of success is? I really don't know. I really don't know. Right now, and I don't know if this sounds cheesy, I really don't, but I feel like the success that I have today in this moment is just being who I am. I've been on a journey of discovering who I really am without all of that programming, without all well, I need to have this, and that, a pension plan, and all of those things, and, to be successful, and a university degree, and, I need at least 2 children. And, as I thought, okay, this is what success looks like. Well, today, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I never thought I would be a stay-at-home mom, because I thought success looked like something different. But today, success to me is being able to take care of my son the way that I want to, and, have a little bit of time to write. I don't have a car anymore because we can't afford it, because I'm a stay-at-home mom. But all of those things, those material things, I don't care anymore. So success to me today, and it might change. It might change, in a couple of months. I have no idea. But success for me today is being able to live as authentically as possible, and being content with what I have right now, and live according to my values. And I'm not. Of course, I would love success. I would love for my book to get published, for it, to be a success. But right now, today, it's being able to work on my book, work on my craft, and take care of my family and take care of myself. That's success to me.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree definitely. And you being able to just define what success means to you, like outside of doing what everybody else is doing, that's the best way to define your own success. I know that a few years ago, Michelle, you decided to step away from the 9 to 5. How was it for you to make that decision?
It was a very difficult decision. But at one point, my body was sending me signals and didn't really give me a choice at one point, because going back to work after maternity leave, working long hours, because, we used to work, long hours, there was a long commute, and then coming back home and, having a little baby, a 1-year-old at home that didn't sleep through the night yet and all those things. And, the grind every day, it became a lot, and my husband and I, as I mentioned before, we're from Gatineau, so all of our families were in Gatineau, far away. We didn't have much of a support system, and at one point, my body was just sending me signals like, this life that you're living and the beat that you have right now is not working anymore, and I developed a lot of anxiety, and I just couldn't function. And so at one point, I just had to stop working. I just had to stop because my body couldn't keep up. And then when I stopped and paused, I was able to reflect and realize, what is working for me in my life and what isn't working for me anymore. But it was hard because even when I did, eventually quit my job, it was really hard to adapt to the new lifestyle because all of my adult life, I was used to the grind, and I was still programmed to like, this is what I should be doing. So I felt really guilty at first, oh, I'm home, oh, I'm home, I should be doing things. And I was like trying to clean everything and organize everything and cook and do all those things and be productive and performant because, that's how I was programmed. I have to perform, I have to do things, I have to keep busy. So it was a huge transition for me to accept the new lifestyle. And I knew, that's what I needed. But it wasn't, just because I knew that's what I needed doesn't mean it was easy to adapt to that new lifestyle.
Definitely. It's such a drastic change, and it's a physical change, but mentally it's like your body is trying to adjust, but it's not adjusting at the same speed as your body, and that's challenging, but that was a decision that you needed to make, because if your body is sending you signals, I mean, if you don't listen to it, it's just going to shut down at some point, and that's not better.
No, exactly. And I'm telling you, you can try to not listen to your body and do things to like put like a Band-Aid on top of all of those signals that your body is sending you, like, oh, stomach aches, I'm just going to take, special medication for my stomach, it must be too much acid. Oh, I can't sleep, then I probably need a sleeping pill. Like, at one point, you can try these other things. Well, maybe I need to relax. I think it's yoga and what I need to do, or I need to do acupuncture, or I need to, whatever you think you need. You can put so many Band-Aids, but at one point your body is like, you have to listen, enough.
I think that's one thing, that our desire to fit a certain mold, to feel successful, is going to drive us crazy. It is going to drive us crazy. Just the desire to be at a level that other people are, to feel that, okay, well, I have success in my life. But if that pattern to attain success wasn't designed for your life, trying to fit in it is not going to feel right. It's going to feel forced, and you're going to force your body to adapt to a rhythm that wasn't meant to be yours.
Exactly.
You're going to try to go on a path that was not designed for you. You don't have the tools to be on that path. I know that before recording, Michelle, we were talking about Michael Jordan. And, Michael Jordan was designed to have the kind of success that he has. He has that drive, to succeed. He'll do whatever it takes to succeed. He'll work out after a game. He'll put in that extra work. If we compare him to any other basketball player, and maybe like that other basketball player, he doesn't have it in him to just work as hard or push his body as hard. he may have the desire for success, but he may not have been wired the same way as Michael Jordan to attain the same kind of level. You know, it's just, we have different paths. You know, we shouldn't try to take on a path that wasn't designed for us. We may have the same goal, but we're gonna get there differently. We're gonna get there, but we don't have to do the same thing as other people do. And I think that's one thing that's damaging us, you know, when we're trying to seek success. Dinny, I'd like to hear about how you define your success.
I think I'm really like at the same place as Michelle. I'm still trying to discover what success means to me. Growing up, I had this idea that my success, although it would be different, but it kind of had to match the level that my mother's success had. So I kind of, for I don't know what reason, I kind of made it my personal goal to be better than what my mother had as a success in her life, like, you know, whatever it was. And we talked about it before, where you kind of associate that with like the strong Black woman syndrome, and you know, it's you know, always pushing and pushing and pushing and trying to attain goals that are not necessarily yours to attain, just because it's what society kind of envisions for you, but it's not necessarily what you should need for yourself. So I for several years, that was success in my head, was like having a good job. It was being able to live debt free, you know, how that's like literally impossible. It's also being recognized in whatever way that you can be amongst your family, right? And after, now that I'm older, and now that I'm living my life a little differently than from the path that I started, I'm realizing that all those things really don't matter anymore, and all those things that I thought that I wanted are really not what I want for myself. So for me, I guess my definition is of success. It's not a definition yet. It's still a work in progress, but I would say is that it's more about like being satisfied and fulfilled every day in the things that I do, and, you know, whatever, and attaining the goals that I set for myself. That then and there is a success, whatever that goal is, whether it's for my personal life, whether it's for how I'm raising my daughter, or what I do through work, or my writing. It's just knowing that, you know, I set a goal for myself, I overcame it, or I completed that task, whatever it was, and that would be the success. And then at the end of the day, I think that you can really measure how successful you are in life when you're able to line up all those good moments, those good jobs that you've told yourself and that people have told you, and that really amount to something.
Oftentimes we wait for big events to celebrate, when we should really celebrate the little things we accomplished, the little good things that we did. That's one way that, you know, we celebrate our success.
If I may, I would say why it's even more important is because we always focus on the bigger picture, but it's really those little achievements and accomplishments that create small pictures that build into that big picture that you're looking to attain. And sometimes, you know, you don't take a moment to appreciate those little moments because you're so focused on like, oh, like this is where I have to go. But like, look at how far you've come and how far you've built up to that moment.
Definitely. It's those milestones before we get to like the peak of the mountain, you know. I know that for you two ladies, a milestone in your life was becoming mothers. And I'd like to touch upon that a little bit and pick your brains on how it was for you to enter motherhood. Because from what I can tell, although I'm not a mother yet, I know there's a lot of pressure to be the perfect mom, to have it all together, to make sure the kids are always clean, are, not acting up in public, make sure your kid is, kind to strangers and not a total spaz in public. So I'd like to know, starting with you, Ludni, what were your initial thoughts as you entered motherhood?
I'm still not too sure how I feel about it. I'm gonna be honest. Becoming a mother was not at all something that I had planned, and like Michelle said earlier, you grow up with that plan in your mind. You go to school, you go to university, you get a good job, then you meet somebody, you get married, you buy a house, then you have your career, then you have kids, and then that's the plan that I kind of thought I was going to follow, which was not at all what happened. So motherhood came at a very vulnerable time for me, where I had to learn to kind of set aside that plan and like go with the new plan and go in that new direction and make the best of it. So I'm still working. It's still a work in progress. There are good days. There's bad days. I'm not gonna lie. Anybody tells you that being a mom is like flowers every day and hugs and kisses and like no headaches, no laundry to do, anything like that, it's a complete lie. It's definitely a very rewarding job. And where I actually realized that is really just like when you become an adult, you have this kind of need to kind of like overcompensate for little things that obviously, especially when your child is very young, you cannot tell you, oh mom, like good job mom, like my stomach is full, I'm so happy. They can't really communicate some of the things that they like about how you're raising them or all the stuff that you're doing for them. So automatically, sometimes you feel like you're not doing enough. You feel like, you should be doing more. You should be, like you said earlier, super mom. You should, make sure that, dinner's cooked, that laundry's done, that your kid is clean, that your kid is well-versed, is well-spoken, performs at school. And you kind of forget to kind of live the experience as it's going. It's a bit of a rat race too, because also, when you become a parent, you have all those people in one ear telling you, oh, you should be doing this, your kid should know this, you should be your kid should be at this level, he should be walking by now, like he doesn't talk and all that. Like you have all those other people telling you on one side, and then you have on the other side all your self-doubt and things that you're like, oh my god, like am I a good mother? I should spend more time with him, especially, for example, like myself, I'm a working mom, contrarily to Michelle, whereas sometimes I'll be at work and I'm like, okay, like I have to make sure that dinner is cooked. I have to try to remember, like, oh, did I go to the grocery store, yesterday? Like, do I have like stuff for my kid for school the next day? So it's really just preparing for those things. And then, so motherhood is really a work in progress. As I was saying, it's super rewarding, especially now that my daughter is 11. She's at the verge of teenagehood. But now I'm kind of happy that we made it there, because we're able to have conversations, and it's just amazing to finally have somebody, because people will tell you, oh my god, you're such a good mother, but you don't really know what it means until your child tells you, I'm really lucky to have you, mom. Like, Thank you. Thank you for being my mom. You know, thank you for taking care of me. And you don't, as a mom, you don't realize that those words can like completely change everything that everything that you're doing. You know, it changes the weight of the struggle, basically.
Oh my gosh, that is so that warms my heart. Oh, Michelle, what were your initial thoughts as you entered motherhood?
Well, I just want to say, Yuni, that was beautiful what you said about motherhood. It was really beautiful. Well, my initial thoughts when I entered motherhood was my life doesn't have to change just because I have a baby. I can keep doing what I'm doing, you know, um, because you have a certain lifestyle and a certain, rhythm that you're used to. And yeah, I was completely in denial, completely in denial. I had no clue what to expect. I mean, yes, and there were babies around me, and I could observe, other parents around me, seeing what, their lives were like. But for some reason, and I don't know why, I thought my life wasn't going to change at all. So there was a huge struggle at first, because, bringing back, a beautiful little baby boy at home is like reality smacked me in the face. And it took a while to adapt and to accept my new life. And actually, I think at a certain point, I was really struggling because I didn't take the time to grieve the person that I was before I became a mom, and instead, because I didn't take the time to grieve, I hold on to that person for way too long, So instead of focusing on being, on discovering who I am as a mother and focusing, on my baby and okay and trying to adapt to this life, I was not letting go. No, my life doesn't have to change, and I don't have to wake up, every 2 hours at night and this and that. And it was hard. But once I did finally accept that part of my life was over, and I'm not saying like, oh, your life is over and you'll never be able to do anything ever again. No, but I had to accept, once I accepted that part of my life was over, then it was like, okay, like, okay, I can do this and actually appreciate this, you know? So, motherhood for me was like an evolving thing, and something that I learned to really appreciate, because instead of focusing on all the things that I couldn't do anymore, I was focusing on all the things that I could do, and all, the beauty that came with, new motherhood. But it's true that it's not easy, and it still isn't. It's not easy, and just like you need, like some days I have bad days, and some days I miss my old life, you know, and it's not easy, and sometimes you're really tired and you're overworked and all of those things, and you put a lot of pressure on yourself, because that is something that I'm very guilty of, and I'm really trying to work on that, not putting too much pressure on myself to be perfect, like a perfect parent. Sometimes I raise my voice, and I'm not proud of it, but it happens, and I feel so bad afterwards, like, oh my God, like I told myself I wouldn't raise my voice at my child and lose patience and all of those things. But you know what? Like, I'm not perfect. Sometimes I'm stressed, and sometimes I'm tired. And sometimes, just the shit comes out of my mouth. Like, I'm sorry, my child, But I mean, I do apologize when I lose it. And I take the time to explain to my son, you know what, mommy, shouldn't have raised her voice. Mommy's really tired right now. And, I'm going to try and do better next time. But yeah, so just also accepting that I'm not perfect. I'm not going to be a perfect parent, and I'm going to make mistakes, but that's okay, because I mean, like my parents, they were good parents, but they weren't perfect parents. So, and I turned out fine. And you know. So yeah, but there is definitely struggles, but there's definitely a lot of joy. And I think that motherhood for me has forced me to face my deepest fears. You know, it really, I feel like motherhood has brought me down to my knees completely. And I've had to face my deepest fears and really look inside myself. And yeah, and actually, motherhood was the catalyst for trying to live more authentically for me. It really was. Because you know what? Like, I don't have time for I don't have time for crap anymore, or you know, trying to fit in a specific box, or trying to do, you know, all these things to be perfect. So yeah, I've been really, you know, trying to work on myself and live as authentically as possible, and motherhood was the catalyst for that. And motherhood was a great catalyst for my art as well. So yeah.
Wow, thank you for that, Michelle. When I hear you ladies talking about motherhood, one thing that comes to my mind is that even though I don't have children yet, is that your children kind of become a reflection of yourself. What are some of the traits that you have that you see in your children? Michelle?
Dramatic. I'm somewhat of a dramatic person. Okay, that is who I am. And yeah, I realized that my son is very vocal about expressing his feelings, his emotions. So, I mean, I think that's great. I think that's great that he's able to do that. But yeah, he's, you know, I definitely see a lot of myself in my son, but I see a lot of his father as well. And I also see, you know, my son is 5 years old now, and I'm starting to see some perfectionist tendencies that are developing too. So I'm trying to notice, okay, where's this coming from? You know, and I automatically think it comes from me. Like, okay, what have I been saying to him? Like, have I been, you know, saying things or acting in such a way, putting pressure? Like, I don't know. So I'm trying to reevaluate right now. I'm trying to reevaluate, you know, what am I saying, and why is he, you know, it's not, you know, it's not an awful thing to be a perfectionist, but I don't want him to be putting all this pressure on himself to be perfect at 5 years old. So yeah, so I see, you know, things like that are developing as well. So we'll see. It's a work in progress constantly, every day.
All right. Ludni?
I couldn't say if there's. I think that my daughter is really like 75% herself, and then 25% both her parents, because she has such a she's a Gemini, so she has a really Gemini personality. She's very curious about things, and she has so many different interests, and she's her own little model. She's her own little person. And as much as, you know, me and her father have infused her with like her creative side, like it's a small portion of like how she's working it out for herself, and how she's developing as a young lady. So yeah, so I guess maybe one of the things that I do recognize in her from me is her tendency to kind of go off. In La La Land, I used to have this whole thing when I was a kid where, at least for me, it was in specific moments, where, for example, I would be home watching TV or reading, and I would literally escape kind of like the place that I was in, and go into my imagination. And sometimes I would live what was happening in books, and that's how I kind of immersed myself in the experience. So for her, it's a bit of the same, but like completely outside of herself, basically. So she could be in class, and then suddenly she's like, she's off. She's thinking about something else. She's doing something else. So that's the one thing that I can recognize myself in her. But like I said, she's really her own person. I really don't know where she came from.
Well, it must be a beautiful thing to see a child developing their own personalities. The quirks, little habits, and it must make you so proud as well to see how your children are, becoming, their own persons. You hope for the best for your child for sure, but it's also a beautiful thing to see them having their own personality and not necessarily just be exactly like you, but to be so different from you that you're like, wow, my child is unique. So I'm so happy that you were able to share that with me and with our audience. As we conclude this episode, I'd like to know if you guys have some final thoughts.
I just wanted to officially congratulate you on publishing your book. Okay, I received it a couple of days ago, and I started reading it, and I just, beautiful, beautiful poems, and some of them I really related to them, and I could really hear your voice too. So I just want to congratulate you on such a beautiful poetry collection, and I urge everybody to run and go get this beautiful collection.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate the support. Luni, any final?
Well, honestly, not much, but I would like, I don't know if I ever said so, and I'm pretty sure the audience will think the same, but thank you, Lindsay, for creating a space where we're able to talk about different topics, and yes, it's centered around your poetry and your book, but it's so much more, and it allows for conversations to flow and ideas to grow. So thank you for giving us the space to create, I should say.
Well, listen, I'm just grateful for you guys for responding and engaging as well. It was my goal with the book and the podcast to really just facilitate people to engage, to just discuss. And I think that what really helps is the people who take part in the podcast as well. Without you guys, there wouldn't be a conversation. I would just be talking to myself. So I want to thank you guys for being on this episode. And I'd like to thank our audience, our viewers, for taking part in that conversation. And I'm encouraging you to keep the conversation going with your circle of friends. Discuss the poem, discuss the topics that we talked about on this episode. On that note, I'd like to remind you to get your copy of the Alpha Female Chronicles poetry collection on the Friesen Press website. I'm also encouraging you to like, subscribe, and share the YouTube channel. I see Ludney is promoting the book, so I'm very happy about that. So thank you guys once again. And
thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for having us.
We'll see you on another episode. See you guys, and God bless.